Now we will show you that based upon the admissions of numerous scholars, what we have said is true. Your new version is a Vatican Bible, a Pope Bible. We submit to you that it is an undeniable fact that at the completion of the New Testament during the first century, apostolic believers began distributing copies of the true Greek New Testament from Antioch, Syria. This Antioch Syrian New Testament, along with the received Masoretic Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament in Hebrew, was the Bible that was used by all true believers from the time of the apostles until now. Before the middle of the 2nd century, these Hebrew and Greek testaments were translated into numerous languages: Syrian, Gothic, Old Latin, etc. And from this point until the year 1881, all Bibles used by evangelical Christians came from this Antioch Syrian source and became known as the Textus Receptus. But in the 19th century, apostate scholarship began to take over the colleges and seminaries and the translation committees, as well as the denominational leadership. These apostate academics sought to overthrow the apostolic Bible from Antioch, Syria, and replace it with the Pope's Vaticanus manuscript. This transition culminated with the Westcott-Hort Greek New Testament, which adopted the Pope's Vatican Bible as its base. We will now show you that modern scholars admit that the Westcott-Hort text is nothing more than an edited version of the Vaticanus manuscript. We will now demonstrate that the new versions come from the Nestle-Aland text, with newer versions coming from the United Bible Society's Greek New Testament, and that these are simply edited versions of Westcott and Hort, who in turn are simply edited versions of the Vaticanus text. A man named Clayton Harrop, in his book History of the New Testament in Plain Language, on page 48, he says, quote, "The edition of Westcott and Hort has served as the basis for most of the work on the Greek New Testament during the past century." So when we talk about Vaticanus, we talk about Westcott and Hort, we talk about Nestle-Aland, we talk about the United Bible Society's text, which all new versions come from, then you are talking about nothing more than either the Vatican Bible or an edited version of the Vatican Bible. When you hold a new version in your hand, you hold the Pope's Bible. Quote, "The Westcott and Hort text, which was the basis for the revised version of the English Bible, also used the copy text method, using the Codex Vaticanus as the base manuscript," end quote. Now, I'm not a big fan of Wikipedia, but that is a neutral source, definitely pro-Roman Catholic, and definitely not pro-King James Version, and they are admitting that the revised version and the text put out by Westcott and Hort is a Pope Vaticanus-based text. Here is Bart Ehrman in his book, The Text of the New Testament in Contemporary Research, page 4. He says, quote, "The great uncial manuscripts, Sinaiticus and Vaticanus, which had dominated the critical editions of Tischendorf in 1869 and Westcott and Hort, 1881. We have another admission that Westcott and Hort is just Vaticanus with edits. Daniel L. Brake, in his book, A Visual History of the English Bible, pages 247 to 248, published by Baker Bookhouse, he says, quote, "The primary family, according to Westcott and Hort, was the neutral text represented best by Codex Vaticanus. So first of all, we have established that the Westcott-Hort text is Vaticanus with edits. Philip Comfort, in his book Encountering the Manuscripts, page 100, quote, "The text produced by Westcott and Hort. Of course, I think they gave too much weight to Codex Vaticanus alone, and this needs to be tempered. This criticism aside, the Westcott and Hort text is extremely reliable," end quote. So here's Philip Comfort criticizing Westcott and Hort for the fact that Westcott and Hort basically used Codex Vaticanus for their text. And even though he says they should temper that use, he still says it's very reliable. In a book titled The Text of the New Testament, Kurt Allen, whose last name is attached to the Nestle-Allen text, Kurt Allen and Barbara Allen, in the Text of the New Testament, page 14, regarding Westcott and Hort, they say, quote, "Codex Vaticanus was their touchstone. They believed that they had discovered in it a representative of the neutral text which came far closer to the original text," end quote. And one last quote from Jack Mormon. Now this is a pro-King James Textus Receptus man, but he sums it up again in his book Forever Settled, page 273, quote, "The New Greek Testament upon which Westcott and Hort had been working for 20 years was portion by portion secretly committed into the hands of the revision committee, and this Greek text in the main follows the Vatican and Sinaiticus manuscripts. Hort's partiality for the Vatican manuscript was practically absolute," end quote. And Jack Mormon's quote is supported by the quotes we have from Kurt Allen and from Philip Comfort and from other pro-Vatican scholars. And now let's look at the quotations from some of these same people admitting that Nestle-Allen is basically Westcott and Hort, which is basically Vaticanus. Philip Comfort, again in his book Encountering the Manuscripts, page 100, quote, "In many instances where I would disagree with the working in the Nestle UBS text in favor of a particular variant reading, I would later check with the Westcott and Hort text and realize that they had often come to the same decision." Again, another quote, "It is remarkable how often they have affirmed the decisions of Westcott and Hort," end quote. Which means it is remarkable how often they've stuck with the Vaticanus manuscript in the Nestle-Allen and United Bible Society's text. Here are more quotations telling us that the United Bible Society's text, which the newer translations are coming from, is nothing more than Westcott and Hort, which is nothing more than Vaticanus. A man named Robert B. Waltz, quote, "If it be noted that the UBS text has now supplanted Westcott and Hort, it should be noticed that UBS, like the text of Bover and Merck, differs very little from Westcott and Hort," end quote. The UBS differs very little from Westcott and Hort, which used Vaticanus as its base text, as we've already established.